Hi everyone, today I just wanted to tell you about how Hytale have recently announced the computer requirements to play the game nice and smoothly. We're going to be looking at minimum targeting 30 plus FPS at 1080p on the low preset, recommended targeting 60 plus FPS at 1080p on the high preset, and recording/streamer, which is a stable frame rate with high video quality capture and streaming at 1440p. We're also going to be checking out some in-game screenshots at various render distances so you know what they look like. Okay, for minimum requirements, which is 1080p at 30 FPS, you're going to need to be on Windows 10 or 11, which I assume most of you already are. As for your CPU, you're going to need an Intel Core i5-7500 or equivalent, AMD Ryzen 3 1200 or equivalent, and for single player with dedicated graphics, which means a graphics card, you're going to need 8GB of RAM, and if you do not have a graphics card, 12GB of RAM, and if you're playing multiplayer, only 8GB of RAM. Now, for your GPU, if you don't have a graphics card inside of your system, your CPU needs to either support Intel UHD Graphics 620 or AMD Radeon Vega 6. Now, if you do have a graphics card in your system, it needs to be either a NVIDIA GTX 900 series, AMD Radeon 400 series, or an Intel Arc A series, along with 20GB of free storage space. To note, the developers have said that based on their own testing, the Intel HD Graphics 630 was able to achieve 30 to 34 FPS at 1080p whilst using the view distance set to 192 blocks. Now what that means is we will show you later on in the video when we go over the view distances in the game. And now for the recommended requirements, which is 1080p at 60 FPS, looks like you're going to need an Intel Core i5-10400 or AMD Ryzen 5 3600 or equivalent for your CPU, 16GB of RAM, and if you don't have a dedicated graphics card, you're going to need either an Intel Iris Xe graphics or AMD Radeon 660M. If you have a dedicated graphics card, it needs to be an NVIDIA GTX 900 series, AMD Radeon 400 series, or Intel Arc A series, again with 20GB of RAM and 8 megabit connection for the internet. Now I assume most of you are targeting this sort of performance, so if you have built your PC or bought your PC within the last 3, 4 or even 5 years, then you should be ready to play Hytale. Okay, for any of you who are planning to record or stream the game at 1440p at 60 FPS, looks like you're going to need, for your CPU, an Intel Core i7-10700K or equivalent, or an AMD Ryzen 7 3800X or equivalent with 32GB of RAM. Now they are recommending you only use a dedicated GPU and not an integrated for this, which you will need an NVIDIA RTX 30 series, AMD Radeon RX 7000 series, or an Intel Arc A series. Note, these recommendations are made as newer graphics cards provide much better visual quality for a given bitrate, especially for live streaming scenarios. If supported, we also strongly recommend the use of AV1/HEVC for video recording. And for your storage, you need an NVMe SSD with at least 10% or 50GB of free storage available. Now, I understand a lot of you might not understand what some of those terms mean, but for those who do want to know that, here you go, that's what it is. And the developers have even stated that on their internal benchmark, which was a Ryzen 9 9950X3D, RTX 5080, 64GB of DDR5 RAM at 6000 speed, they sustained around 400 FPS at 3840 by 1440 resolution, with a view distance set to 768 blocks whilst recording the game. Now again, I understand that might not be something that a lot of you understand, but for those of you who need that information, there you go. For those of you who are using Mac or Linux, they sadly don't have any system requirements for it as of yet, but they are working on getting those out. And if you are wanting to play the game on Steamdeck, they also lack the ability to test it right now, as they don't plan to launch the game on Steam until they determine they are able to comply with Steam's policies. And it should work with Steamdeck, but they lack good input mappings, small display UI, so they ask for some patience, and the requirements will be updated as they apply optimizations to early access, which I assume that means that throughout the game's life cycle over the years they're going to optimize the game and make it run better and better. Maybe some updates might make the game slightly harder to run, maybe some will make it easier to run. We will just have to see in the future. I'm hoping it allows for more and more people to play who are on restricted budgets or on really old systems and aren't able to upgrade. I just hope we're all able to at least play the game. And there is no word on console requirements because, as far as I'm aware, they are not releasing it on console yet. But from what I've heard through friends and other things, they do plan to release it on console in the future. But I would assume that would take a fair few years. So if you're holding out for a console release, I would strongly suggest maybe trying to get some sort of used computer if you can. If not, I'll be posting plenty of content on YouTube for you to watch. They have also posted what the different render distances will look like. Like, here's the 192 block render distance from above, and here's what it looks like from a player's perspective. If you look over to the left side in the distance, you'll see that sort of tree where it starts to get a bit foggier, and then in the distance, a very foggy mountain. And this is what 192 block render distance will look like. You know, it's not very far, but it's also not too bad. And here's 384 blocks from above and 384 blocks from the player's perspective. Here you can see much further, and it starts to feel like this is the sweet spot and this is how much you will only ever need to see. But as you'll see next when we show 768 blocks, this is how much you can see. You start to see in the background, you see this sort of structure type thing, which I don't know what that is as of yet. And you start to see even more and even more and even more. And if you look further in distance, you do start to see some fogginess, but again, I think 768 might be where a lot of people on the mid-range or higher end computers might stay. People might choose to stay at 368 or even lower. It's entirely up to you. And this is the 1024 render distance. You'll notice you can see much further and see like this mountain in the background, but it sort of has a drop off in quality compared to 768 because it doesn't feel like that you can see that much more. So 768 might become the sweet spot for mid-range computers, and 1024 might be if you can afford the performance. Now, I don't know if that's all the render distances they've got in the game, or if there's higher, if there's lower than 192. We'll have to see when the game comes out. And that's going to be it from me from my first Hytale video. You know, if you liked it, please leave a like and subscribe to let me know you want to see more Hytale videos. And just know that in the coming days and weeks before launch, you'll be seeing more news videos, more information videos, and when the game is dropped, you'll be seeing videos at least weekly, possibly every 3 days, possibly even daily. So I hope to see you there, and have a fantastic day. Goodbye.